We are excited to be joined tonight by Representative Katie Porter of California. Um, Many of you here tonight have been supporting us ever since we started in 2016 to oppose Donald Trump, and many of you are also new to our community. So welcome, and we're glad you're here. We have an incredible lineup of speakers tonight, but first I want to introduce our Executive Director, Jose Vasquez, to introduce our special guests.
Great, thanks a lot, Alex. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jose Vasquez. I'm an Army vet calling from New York City, and super excited to be here with you, Representative Katie Porter. Katie Porter represents California's 45th District, which is in the Orange County area. She's on the House Financial Services Committee and House Oversight and Reform Committee. She's also a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. She's a single mom, single working mom, and does an amazing job of holding CEOs accountable with her what I call whiteboard of justice. And so folks may have seen some of those Now This videos and other viral videos going around. So really appreciate your voice, Representative, and as somebody who's raised by a single mom, also appreciate the work you do at home. So I'd love to hand it over to you for your remarks, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. I always love meeting people who turned out to be amazing human beings, and they were raised by single moms, because it gives me hope for my own kids, which I need on a regular basis. So it's wonderful to get to connect with you. Everyone, I'm Congresswoman Katie Porter. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm a straight shooter. I get right to the point. And here is the point. Common Defense is supporting some of the very best candidates that the Democratic Party has to offer. The future of our party, the future of our country is on the line. And Common Defense is supporting people like Mikey Sherrill, Ro Khanna, Jim McGovern, Ayanna Pressley. That is a group of people that I am proud to be part of. I don't need to tell you, of all people, that national security isn't just what people with stars on their shoulders say, or even what most members of Congress like to say it is. Sure, like there's a part of national security that's about planes and tanks and guns, but what good is that if we can't stop a pandemic or address climate change, or we don't have free and fair elections? None of those things are going to change overnight just because we elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, although we need to do that. But when Joe and Kamala get elected, that's when the real work starts of repairing our democracy, of getting money out of politics, and making sure that DC, and if it wants to, Puerto Rico, has full representation in Congress. If that sounds like a lot, let me share with you just a partial list of laws that were passed after Watergate. The War Powers Act, the 1974 amendments to the Freedom of Information Act, the 1974 amendments to the Federal Election Campaign Act, the Inspector General's Act, the Arms Export Control Act, the National Emergencies Act, and that is just a few of the big ones. Here we are again in our country in a similar moment. At best, our democracy has just had a near-death experience, and it would be a terrible mistake not to use this moment to make big structural change. There's another thing about the Watergate analogy, which people tend to forget, and it's that Congress, after Watergate, was tired of being a lapdog. Congress was ready to fight for itself as an institution, to stand up for its independence and its authority. And they did so by passing landmark legislation. And we are going to need that kind of Congress in the 117th Congress. We're going to need every progressive vote we can get. The money we're raising here tonight is going to help us get those kinds of people in our Congress, the people who are going to help us transform the institution and give it its power and energy for years to come. Before we go to question and answer, I just want to say one more time that the day that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are elected is the day that the work starts. Thank you so much for having me, and I'd be thrilled to take some questions.
Wonderful. So again, if you have questions for the Congresswoman, there's a Q&A function in the bottom middle of your screen where you can submit the question. and we're going to start calling on people. But first, I want to announce that we do have closed captioning. So if you would benefit from that accessibility feature, that should be available. You should see that popping up. And if you can't, type in the chat. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to our awesome host committee: Jonathan Smucker, Winnie Holzman, and Paul Dooley, Aaron Bocher, and Marisol Ibarra. So first, I want to call on Brian T. To ask his question. Can we allow Brian T. to open up here?
Hi.
We can hear you, Brian. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Will we be pushing for the DC and Puerto Rican statehood? I know that Puerto Rico has already voted like 3 times to join as a state. And I believe representation is, like you were speaking earlier, is of utmost importance, and we need to do that, in my opinion. But what's the priority here?
Yep. So the House this year in this current Congress, we voted to make DC a state, and it passed the House. It was a really terrific moment. And obviously I was in DC for that vote and got to see how the people of the city of DC were reacting to finally having a voice in the government that has so much control and power over their lives. And so I think having done DC in the 116th Congress, the Senate obviously didn't take that up. That's why we're fighting to win the Senate. But I think we absolutely will bring DC forward again. I very much think it makes sense to give the people of Puerto Rico that option. Representation matters. It's really hard for us to send servicemen and women into harm's way, telling them they are fighting for our democratic values, if we're denying those core principles of democracy, like representation at home. So I think this is something that progressives agree on. I think it's something that we can push forward on. This magic idea that there have to be 100 senators. You know, when a lot of these older senators were born, there were only 96 senators. There's nothing magical about the number 100. We should make sure that every person who's paying taxes to the United States, who's stepping up and serving in our armed forces, also has full citizenship and full statehood.
Great. So our next question is going to be from Jordan Weltman. And I also just wanted to double check how much time you have. Do you have 5 more minutes, Congresswoman?
Yep, I do. Yep, till
Great.
3:50, my time will be perfect.
Great. All right, go ahead, Jordan Weltman. Let's enable Jordan to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Jordan.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay, because it doesn't have the normal participant where you unmute yourself. So my question, Katie, is whether big structural change includes court reform.
Includes court reform?
Yep.
Yep. So I think we're at a moment where we are having to rethink all of these core institutions. So if you think about the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch, I think that what we've seen Trump do should have prompted us to really reflect on whether we have that power and those checks and balances allocated correctly. So I think we're going to see a long period, I hope, of really sincere questioning about whether or not the executive has too much authority, and whether the Congress, frankly, has ceded too much authority. Sometimes the executive's taken it, but to be clear, sometimes Congress has willingly given up the people's authority and the people's voice in things. I think that same conversation should be happening with regard to the judicial branch. I recently signed on to a bill that would create 18-year term limits for Supreme Court justices. And that does 2 things that I think are really important. One is that it evens out the cycle of Supreme Court appointments so that every president will have the ability to appoint 1 or more justices. So it's going to prevent kind of one president gets a whole bunch, the next president might get none. The second thing it's going to do is ensure that our court stays vital, multi-generational, and diverse. And so we need to have those people coming off onto the court. I do think protecting judges from political influence is incredibly important. But I think we can do that with a really long-term limit, like 18 years, and it will make sure that we're getting fresh voices, newer voices, voices that are closer to the American people and the problems that they're facing onto the court. So that's one example of a judicial reform that I support. But there's a number of other issues. One of the things I was really involved in as a law professor was the fight to make federal court documents freely available to the public. The system that we had required people to pay. You had to have an account. What happens in our courts? The justice that's being meted out there, or the lack of justice in some cases, people need to be able to see that. It needs to be fully transparent and accessible and available to every American. So that's kind of where I'm thinking right now on this. But I think we should never be afraid to debate ideas about how to reform our institutions of democracy. We cannot lead as a democratic power if we are afraid to debate ideas. That's core to who we are as a country. It's core to what's let us survive and stay strong. And so I want to hear different ideas about how to improve our court system. I'm not going to back away from any kind of idea or any kind of robust discussion, because I know that I'll ultimately be making up my own mind based on what I think is best for this country. And I think if every representative felt that in their hearts, they wouldn't be afraid of any ideas either.
Great. So next we've got a question directly relating to your service on the Oversight Committee. I'd like to call on Kathy Abbott to ask the next question. So let's bring in Kathy Abbott. All right, Kathy, you should be able to speak now. Let's see, let me ask you to unmute. There you
Hello,
go.
Congressman Porter. It's a privilege and a pleasure. I wanted to ask you, for the 117th Congress, what would be the number one top priority for the first 6 months? What do you think should be handled in that very first 6 months? And then my second question, if you do have time to answer it, subsequent to that, how should this Congress handle the outgoing administration, hopefully, in light of what we see as their criminal activities?
Yep. So with regard to Congress's first priorities, I think that the pandemic is going to continue to shape what's happening in our country, and we're going to have to continue to be responsive to it. One of the things that means is making sure that the federal government is stepping up to support state and local governments and the services that they provide on the ground. So that's incredibly important. One of the other issues I'm working a lot on is mental health. This is already a crisis in our country: access and affordability, insurance coverage of mental health care, and that problem has only grown during the pandemic. Another issue that I think is really, really important to tackle is the fact that we are seeing women, particularly women of young children, exit the workforce in record numbers. 80% of those who dropped out of the labor force in September were women and were mothers. And so if we want to have a strong, vibrant economy with equal opportunity for everybody, then we need to make sure that we're supporting working families with supports for childcare and elder care, and really think about caregiving as a core function of our economy. And this is one element of the Joe Biden-Kamala Harris plan that I really like, is their focus on the caring workforce and on expanding that. So those are three big areas of priority: mental health and childcare and the caregiving economy, and then state and local funding. The last one I would mention is there are so many lessons that we can learn about how to distribute a vaccine from the mismanagement and mistakes that we've made with testing. So to the extent that we've had COVID testing all mixed up with insurance companies and medical necessity and different kinds of criteria, rather than treating testing as a public health issue, we have really slowed down the amount of testing. So as we approach thinking about vaccine dissemination, we need to be doing it from a public health perspective and not allowing pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies to control the process. So those are things that I've been thinking on and working on.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Congresswoman. You've got an election to win. We need your voice back in in Congress, and it's been in such an incredible voice at that. Thank you so much for being such an incredible ally to Common Defense, and really just investing and helping us build this grassroots movement to support people like you and some of those other leaders that you named earlier. So I know your time is limited, but we want to really thank you for joining. And we had so many amazing questions from the participants. I'm sorry we didn't have time to get to them all. Thank you very much, Congresswoman.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for what you guys are doing. You are a really powerful and important voice, and we need to support the same kind of vibrancy of discussion, same kind of diversity of thought when it comes to topics of national security as we do in other areas. So thank you for creating that space, for lifting up voices that for too long have not been heard. You really are an inspiring partner for me, and I'm grateful for the partnership and ready for fight for years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so next I'd like to introduce a member of our host committee, Aaron, to talk about his reasons for why he's supporting this movement and part of this movement. So Aaron, the floor is yours.
Hi. Well, firstly, I want to say thank you to everyone who is so kind to donate to Common Defense in support of this project, and then especially to Representative Porter for sharing her time with us. I want to start off by saying that I'm very proud to be a member of Common Defense. I never really appreciated the power of the veteran's voice until I got involved with Common Defense. It was actually Alex McCoy who got a hold of me and asked me to join Common Defense. And that was in a period when the Bernie campaign was drawing down, and I was really looking for a place to house my time and my effort and my volunteership. I served in the U.S. Navy, and it wasn't until I got involved with Common Defense that I saw other progressive veterans really engaged in trying to turn the world into what they wanted it to be. And one of the biggest things that Common Defense has given me is an opportunity to use my veterans' voice to enact the kind of change that I want to see in the world. Since joining Common Defense, I've been able to participate in even occasionally taking a play out of Representative Porter's playbook and being able to grill them on issues like our ongoing wars abroad, climate change, the movement for Black lives, and the militarization of our police force here at home. Another thing that Common Defense does that's been huge for me is giving me access to the kind of training and mentorship that I'll need to continue to engage in the kind of activism that I want to be a part of. We have something in-house called the Veterans Organizing Institute. Common Defense trains all of its volunteers to be as effective and powerful as possible. And then another big thing that Common Defense has given me is access to membership. Being a part of Common Defense has connected me with a lot of volunteers and other veterans from all over the country and different walks of life, and really has opened my eyes to what is possible through this institution. And then finally, one of the most critical things that I've been given the opportunity to do in Common Defense is to lead. And right now I'm working with Alex and other members of Common Defense to build out a coalition of veterans and progressive veteran organizations to get our heads around and figure out what our plan is going to be to secure the integrity of this coming election and our democratic institutions for whatever may come in November. I think for me personally, and then I think across the board, there's a pretty strong sensitivity that we're not really sure what this next month's going to hold. So we need to be prepared for just about anything. We all know this moment is too important to lose. So finding a place that I know values my time, that I know values the donations I'm able to give it, and that I know will keep its values at its helm in steering us for the next couple of years is really important to me. When I put my time, my effort, my energy into Common Defense, I know that is time well spent, and that time is going to act as a force multiplier in the kinds of change I want to see in the world. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm asking you to donate to Common Defense so that we can continue that mission of mobilizing veterans to be the kind of change we want to see in the world. Alex, back to you.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And I feel the exact same way. This has been just a personally inspirational movement to be part of, and something that has brought me a sense of community that reminds me of the best pieces of what it was like to serve in the military. There was a lot that wasn't so great, but there was some that was really great. And that's really what's kept me going in this really important work that we're doing. So, to talk about kind of how all this came to be, I want to next introduce a member of our board of directors and wonderful friend and mentor, Jonathan Smucker, to share some of his perspective. Jonathan, go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Alex. And I wish I could thank Katie, but I know she left. Hi, I'm Jonathan. I'm calling in from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where I am an organizer and really working hard to win the state of Pennsylvania. And I'm really honored to be here tonight. In late 2015, I was helping to support a small group of veterans to get ready to what we call bird dog, confront candidates. We were getting ready to bird dog presidential candidates on a range of issues. So since the start of the Iraq War, I had been playing a support role in relation to some veteran-led organizing efforts, especially in relationship to stopping the Iraq War. And I had really seen how powerful veterans' voices are in moving the public, in moving particular constituencies, and in moving politicians. And so the first event that these veterans had organized was a multiple candidate all-day GOP primary event in New Hampshire in January. And it was amazing. I watched as one by one veterans who had written out their messages and spent time practicing, giving each other feedback. They stood up in this event, they introduced themselves, identified themselves as veterans. They were met with huge applause at the GOP events. And then they just stuck it to the candidates, and it was amazing. It really demonstrated the kind of power of this. We didn't even know it then, but that was the beginnings of what would become soon Common Defense. And it's been really thrilling to watch this movement grow since then, and just watch the impact that this movement has continued to have, both in terms of participants, getting active veterans, having a place to be politically involved and to get training and support in that, and the impact in the larger world. So we're now at a tipping point, and we really, this organization has the power to influence not only the outcome of the presidential election and other races that Common Defense is involved with, but we can influence a lot more. Whether or not there's a contested election, we know Trump will certainly continue to put these claims forward that the election's rigged, that fraud was rampant, that his supporters should take matters into their own hands. We know this is incredibly dangerous. So Common Defense, I believe, is really positioned to play a positive role in this dangerous situation. And it's really important that they are adequately funded to be able to play this role. Tonight, we're trying to raise $10,000 to support the Common Defense Quick Response Force. I'm upping my contribution tonight, and I really hope that you'll do the same, whether you've contributed before or whether this is your first time contributing. The Common Defense Quick Response Force will leverage the organization's membership and the moral authority of the veteran voice to combat the certainty we know that will be there of voter intimidation, of rampant conspiracy theories, of calls for escalation of violence, and any pressure that may be put on legislatures or electors to not cast their votes as the people of their state have determined that they should. So we hope you'll make an investment tonight in this effort to ensure that all of our work for the past 4 years is not undermined or stolen by Trump's cynical narrative. So thank you so much for whatever you can contribute tonight.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, so we will be doing more events like this in the future, as we get our sea legs under us, so to speak. This movement is just getting stronger. This team is just growing. We're getting increasingly good at what we're doing, and we're having more and more demonstrable impact on protecting our democracy, electing progressives, and winning real change. Whether it was the impeachment of Donald Trump, whether it's getting people to commit to ending the forever wars, whether it's protecting our VA and fighting for healthcare for all. We're here and we're going to be in the trenches now in these last days before the election, afterwards defending the results, and onward into the next Congress to fight for the change that we need for regular people. So thank you so much. We're very thankful to Congresswoman Katie Porter, who's an incredible ally. We have so many wonderful partners who we have endorsed and who are, we work closely with on Capitol Hill. We hope to send more Katie Porters to Congress, and we ask you to join us in that work. And we'll put the donate link here in the chat. We really need your help. This is a grassroots organization. We depend upon donations by regular people like you in order to exist. So if you believe in this cause, if you feel connected to this community, if the ideals that we fight for resonate with you and represent the future that you want to see, we're going to need your help in order to make that actualized, make that a reality. So the other ask of you is to please introduce us to a friend or a colleague or someone you know, someone you're related to, someone you may have in your neighborhood who may be interested in learning more about this work. There's still a lot of education to be done in our community about the existence of this progressive veterans movement. So if you know veterans, if you know military family members, or if you just know fellow progressives that want to support these causes that we're fighting for and would be interested in staying in touch and getting connected, if you know people who are veterans who are willing to join our Democracy Quick Reaction Force to defend the results and protect every vote of every American, make sure that those votes are counted, please let them know and spread the word and send them to our website and get them connected to us. Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for all the panelists, all the speakers. And if you have any ideas, any suggestions, my personal email is alex@commondefense.us. My personal cell phone number is 401-477-9966. We are here. We're a grassroots organization. We're accountable to you. I'm going to put that information in the chat. Send me your ideas. Send me your thoughts, and let's work together. Let's win. Thank you.